Idaho leading 43-6 with 12.5 minutes remaining in the third quarter. The give is to Thomas. Hayner is there. And Shane McKenna puts the finishing touches along with a couple other Broncos. But that is something that Boise State needed to start a long time ago, that gang tackling. We haven't seen much of that today.
Well, I think that's the third play that I've seen any type of gang tackling on. Other than that, it's been a one-on-one and missed tackles all the way for Boise State. And Joel Thomas has looked like Barry Sanders this whole game. It's pretty incredible that it's amazing how you see one team do something one play and then just not do it in any way the next time out. You know, you see gang tackling one play, and then the next play you see guys just missing one-on-one tackles. And it's a weird deal.
A fake to Thomas. And speaking of Joel Thomas, the Vandals leading the game 43-6, run a third punt for a touchdown. And I'll tell you, there will be no love lost between these two after that. Bart, have you ever seen anything like that?
I think that's a pretty cheap call by a coaching staff against a team that's down, and they're really trying to rub it in.
We are the tide from the north, we're brave and we're bold. Defeating our rivals never gets old. Making our way to the Big Sky Conference. Watch out, 'cause here comes the silver and gold. Whoa, whoa. This is Tubbs at the club for the Vandals of Idaho.
Welcome back, Tri from the North, Brave and Bold, to the official, unofficial podcast of your Idaho Vandals and the Vandals affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brian Marceau, joined today by Dallas Hammer, who has no Rams news, but otherwise. Dallas, how's it going?
It's all right. I'm back to sports depression. A couple months ago, the Anaheim Ducks looked like they were a sure lock for the playoffs. Fast forward to 2022, and the last 2 months have been awful, and I was burying my head in it with the excitement and with the Rams, and now I'm back to like, oh yeah, this is what it's like when your sports teams suck. The world is normal again.
Okay, I'm not going to step on the lead because Marten already did that with the title of this episode being Vandal Streaking, but we actually had a good week. We'll get to the good week. And the person who's going to make sure we get to that good week, Mr. Sunshine and Rainbows himself, producer Marten Hot Take Heemstra, holding it down in the 83843.
Yep.
That's a question mark. Yeah, I remember Moscow. Marten, how's it going?
I'm doing good. It was a good day for me. My work's a little slow. It was a good Monday after the women's came back and won. But yeah, it's been a good day for me so far. A good week so far.
Good to hear, because we have... Weirdly, guys, I mean, we're not going to get lost in where we actually are with the basketball teams, but this is maybe an episode produced, obviously, by our producer, Marten, but it feels like it was written by Marten because we have a lot of good news to talk about. We've got a men's team looking a lot better as of late, women's team looking better as of late. We have some football miscellaneous news to get to, but first, because it does relate to Vandal football and Vandal athletics, we're going to jump right into Around the Bar, brought to us by Hughes River Expedition. And the news we're going to lead with: former University of Idaho head football coach Paul Petrino is now a former South Alabama analyst after, I think, what felt like 6 minutes. Marten told us before show it was 6 weeks. Whatever. You could tell me he was at South Alabama for 6 minutes or 6 weeks. I don't care which. Paul Petrino is now a former South Alabama analyst, and he is now a Central Michigan offensive coordinator, which means Central Michigan is coordinated on the defensive side by a fired Idaho coach, Rob Akey. And because one is never enough, they are now being coordinated on the offensive side by a fired Idaho coach, Paul Petrino. And Dallas, obviously, look, there's a clear takeaway for why this is great news. Yes, it's cool that Paul got another job. It's cool that he got a coordinator job. That's, a better position than analyst. They're both G5 positions, but one's coordinator. You know why this is good news for Idaho, Dallas.
Yeah, probably about 100,000 reasons why this is good for Idaho.
Oh, way more than 100,000.
Well, from his analyst salary to his coordinator salary, we just added on an extra $100,000. We don't have to pay the guy, so that's why we're bringing him up today. I know most of us have moved on or have tried to move on, but this is fantastic news. Anytime the guy you fired goes and gets a G5 coordinator position and is able to knock out a good chunk of that buyout, you can't be more than happy for the guy. So it's awesome to see. I'm just hoping that we see maybe Dennis Erickson decides to come back. Maybe Nick Holt decides to come back. They're looking for a special teams coordinator over there. Let's make it 3 for 3.
Well,
actually, I don't think they're actually.
Wouldn't Tom Cable be the other most recently fired head coach?
Yes, but not the most recent head coach.
Right. No. But the streak was clearly fired coaches.
If you're going with fired coaches, then yes, it's time to get Tom Cable to the G5. Fire up Chips.
Yeah, and to be more specific, Paul Petrino is replacing Kevin Barbe for the offensive coordinator last season for Central Michigan. Barbe's base salary was $154,713 according to USA Today. Now that, of course, does not include any sort of incentives that may be included in the contract or might not be, but still for Vandal purposes, every dollar that Paul Petrino makes as a coach elsewhere is cut out of the payout he's owed from the University of Idaho. So obviously $154,000 does not take away the entire payout. It doesn't take away half the payout, but $154,000, pretty big, pretty nice chunk of change. That's an assistant coach position here plus, change but whatever. I don't care what it equates to. What I care is that it's been an ongoing story forever, and it will always be an ongoing story for FCS schools, that your budget really does matter. It's hard for schools to be able to fire a coach and continue to pay for everything. And we just found I'm going to round up, $155,000. We just found that Idaho does not have to pay out. I don't have anything else to chime in on here. Dallas, do you?
I mean, I just find it hilarious that there was a large contingency of this fan base that wanted him gone over the last 4 years or so. Couldn't get rid of the guy, and now he's gotten 2 jobs within the span of 3 months. Truly impressive work to get 2 brand new jobs after getting fired from one. So props to that guy. I'm just stunned.
Reputationally, as a position coach, we'd had a lot of people message us saying that he was good at a lower level of responsibility. But I am kind of like you. I'm actually done with Paul Petrino. I'm here for the money. It's cool for him that he got a job. I care about the money. Hot take before we transition. We have some house cleaning football news we're going to get through before the veggie discussion. Before I'm serving you guys veggies, or what some people are calling veggie tails, not trademarked for sure. Hot take, anything you want to add to the Paul Petrino gets a job and saves us some money?
I got nothing to add on this. I'm just saving the university money. Thank you, Paul.
Okay. Well, in the spirit of house cleaning, we have another item to get to. This is a little bit old. It's around signing day. Relates to an article in the Coeur d'Alene Press. Interview Coach Jason Eck did with a reporter for the Coeur d'Alene Press, Mark Nelke. I have no idea how to pronounce his name. And the reason we're bringing this up is we're going to have a few position discussions at some point between now and the spring game, and then after the spring game and into August. One of the brain dead positions that we can talk about is quarterback, and we're not going to have a big quarterback session yet. I want to actually have some practice, and I want some actual games, as in spring game and then fall practice to take place for us to talk about starters. But we may have some news about a pretty big name that Vandals are going to be aware of, that has been a hot topic a few years ago when he wasn't seeing the field, and then the last couple years when he was seeing the field in an interesting kind of way. Zach Borish, we may have some clarity on how Jason Eck plans to use Zach Borish. In the interview with the Coeur d'Alene Press, honestly, what he said is, going to be, it's going to land as pretty promising news, because I know that Dallas, I think you're kind of like me, of you like seeing Borish on the field. And the last couple of years, the discussion has always been Borish at quarterback or Borish at nothing, because that's how he was used by that last guy we talked about. But in this article in Coeur d'Alene Press, I'm going to read Jason Eck's words on Borish. I think he's a guy we can use some at quarterback, some at receiver, and some at running back. That translates to use him all over the field, meaning if he's not a quarterback, he's going to see the ball elsewhere. Dallas, how's that feel to hear?
That feels fantastic. I mean, without dumping too hard on the previous coaching staff, I feel like every single person in the dome, minus about 10 people that were paid to be there on the sideline, could tell that kid needs the ball more. He's one of the best athletes on the team. He's explosive enough that you have to find a way to get him the ball and do it in more creative ways than just run, I don't know, off the guard and just hit the same gap over and over and over for 3 yards. There's a better way to run the football with Zach Borish. There's a better way to get him the ball, throw him the ball, let him throw it every once in a while. Like the guys in the comment section are saying, like Tom Kendall saying, can't wait to see what he can do with the coaches that's going to utilize him properly. Taylor Cash, go gadget Borish, Captain 58, Borish as our Taysom Hill. I like to say it as the Jerry Louis McGee role for anybody that remembers him at Montana. And if anybody wasn't following back then, maybe when he was in at Lake City, that kid was electric. He was the coaches found a way to put him all over the field, and that's what they need to do with Borish. And it's great to hear that Eck is acknowledging publicly Borish can throw, he can catch, he can run. Let's get him on the field and use him as a weapon, which is what he's supposed to be. Couldn't be more happy about that. And I do have to give it to Taylor Cash. We are all, I think, all on board with go gadget Borish for the foreseeable future. That is, I need to get that like tattooed on me or something.
Yeah, I was attempting to look it up while you were talking, Dallas. But do you remember the UC Davis had a player they used essentially as a utility kind of guy? Can you either filibuster or can you look up a UC Davis box score while I talk really quick?
Yeah, I will be looking in the background because I don't remember that kid's name.
Look up the UC Davis Idaho box score. Anyway, we saw Dan Hawkins do this at UC Davis where he had we sound like morons now. We don't have the guy's name up. But anyway, they had a Borish type of player who they played at quarterback when it made sense. He also played a receiver. He also had the ball handed off to him. It sounds.
Trent Tompkins was their Wildcat quarterback.
Perfect. Trent Tompkins. He saw the ball all over the place. That sounds like the role that Borish might be moving into. And it also lets us, when we have the quarterback discussion, at least based off this piece of news, there's more news that we might get later. But based off this piece of news, it lets us know that, hey, when we have the quarterback discussion about who may be our starter, because we have like 9,000 quarterbacks on roster, actually 8 if you count Borish, lets us parse out, okay, looks like we have, according to Eck, we've got package for Borish, and then he's going to see the ball. He's going to see the ball elsewhere. I think that's a welcome development. I also think it's what a lot of people say is kind of brain dead development based off what we saw last year of Borish is a pretty electric runner. He needs to see the ball other than just being quarterback, where we're getting no pass plays called at all. So the other team knows exactly what's going to happen. Once again, not a ton else to add, Dallas. Do you want to transition us to our next football news?
Absolutely. So we do have a couple new kids on the program. We're not sure yet if they're preferred walk-ons or on scholarship or what. Again, things get kind of hazy after signing day. I'll speak for Hot Take Heemster here because he was kind of the one explaining it. He's much more into recruiting than either Brian and I are. Usually if a guy is committing on his Twitter account and not being announced by the university, it's usually a preferred walk-on. So both of these guys might be preferred walk-ons, but we have a couple linemen that have joined the program. I am explicitly thrilled to have Cooper Carlson on program only because he's 6'4", 296 pounds. You can't teach size. And as a high school senior who I was probably 5'11", $145, 6'4", 296 is breathtaking to me. Can't say a thing about how the kid plays. I haven't watched his huddle. We have it up here on the YouTube. Haven't watched the huddle yet, but you can't teach a kid to be that big. So at absolute minimum, he's a huge body to put in the weight room, put on the team, and use his depth.
Yeah, by the things I notice here are first, Cooper Carlson's from Olympia, Washington, Jack Foster from Boise, Idaho, hits right in something Jason Eck talked about in his press conference. He talked about signing day at the event I was at in Coeur d'Alene. Marten, I'm guessing Eck referenced recruiting in the Northwest area at the signing day event you went to in Moscow. For the listeners, Marten is nodding, not shaking. Marten is nodding in agreement. Two local guys. Eck talked about trying to win a little bit more local area recruiting battles, as that's something that he successfully did at South Dakota State. That's something that Montana schools have done, where they recruit guys who look at on paper, they don't have a ton of stars next to their names. They might not be guys going to camps, but they're guys who have the ability to produce if they have time and a program that's going to develop them. Two freshman offensive linemen. This is another thing Eck talked about in his press conference and the event I went to in Coeur d'Alene. The offensive linemen, a lot of the talented guys he developed at South Dakota State. I mean, Stiglmeier's head coach, but Eck helped develop South Dakota State. They were guys who their freshman year, they were not great FCS contributors at that point. By the time they're juniors and seniors, they're guys who people look at as, wow, how did that guy not go to an FBS school? These two guys might be a great candidate, as in they're offensive linemen. Eck has a offensive line background, but I mean, asterisk, we're probably not going to be too dependent on freshmen on the offensive line if this team's going to be good. So we're probably not going to hear a ton from Jack Foster and Cooper Carlson for a couple of years, but hey, they're Vandals. I'm glad to have them on. Hot take, anything you want to add to this quick recruitment update?
It's just nice to see more offensive linemen. Getting more offensive linemen is always good to have. You can never have enough offensive linemen. And that's all I got to add.
That's coming from an offensive lineman himself, guys. So we did a deep dive for that one. Thank you, Marten. And viewers did not. I mean, listeners saw that. Viewers saw the post. Listeners did not. Wildly, guys, because we're not going to have bullshit football conversations about nothing. At this point, that's the end of our football talk. But we're going to have to spend a little bit more time talking about basketball, because we had some developments in basketball, which we'll get to right after we remind everyone that, hey, Around the Bar was brought to us by Hughes River Expedition. If you're looking for a great all-inclusive week-long vacation, don't look past your backyard. Venture into the largest protected wilderness in the continental U.S., located right here in the great state of Idaho. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River no return, the Salmon River Canyons, or the Selway. You can even check out special trips like the one to see the Perstead meteor shower. Camp on pristine beaches, run amazing whitewater, hike scenic trails, spot wildlife, soak in beautiful natural hot springs, take in the history along the river, and fish on the most remote stretches of river in the country. You just bring your clothes, let HRE handle the rest. Hughes River Expeditions has been Vandal owned and operated since 1976 and ready to take you on a vacation of a lifetime. What are you waiting for? Find out what it's like to grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Call them now at 800-262-1882 or check them out at hughesriver.com. Which actually, hey, we have one more football thing to get to. I lied, guys. And Marten, this is a curveball. We did have some big transfer news in the Big Sky that just came up last day or so. People who've been following the Big Sky for a couple of years may remember the name Elijah Dodson. He was an all Big Sky running back in 2019. Sacramento State. He's running back for Sacramento State. Kind of a dual threat. Good pass catcher. Also just a good rusher. Sac State doesn't play in 2020. They don't play in the spring. Fall 2021, Elijah Dodson, it's unclear what was going on, but the almost all-American level running back was just not really playing for them. Elijah Dodson left Sac State midseason. Troy Taylor, who doesn't say a ton of the press anyway, more or less just said he supported Elijah Dodson's decision. He needed to not play in football right then. Well, Elijah Dodson, former All-Big Sky running back, has found a home in, surprise, surprise, Greeley, Colorado, where Ed McCaffrey, and look, we talked about the news of, good Lord, what's happening? 30-plus guys have left the program. Well, one of the big guys people were concerned about leaving the program, Northern Colorado, was freshman running back Gene Sledge, and they just picked up a recruit who is better than Gene Sledge in Elijah Dodson. Dallas, what's your take?
I'm shocked that somebody would want to transfer to Northern Colorado. That is my take. Honestly, no, this is huge for those guys. I don't care at all because I don't care about Northern Colorado. But that guy's going to go put up insane. Assuming he gets, we don't know what was going on at Sac State again. Like came out of nowhere to when they turned it around. He was their guy. No idea what happened there, but assuming he can get back to his 19 levels of production, you would assume he's going to be a very integral part of that absolutely terrible Northern Colorado offense. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
And Captain 58 asked if any Sac State dudes have the inside line on that, meaning Dodson transferring out. Dude was a stud in 2019. Captain, I'm going to speak to you directly. In researching for back when we did the episodes on who was going to be the head coach at Idaho, when I got news of potential coaches who we were told had applied or had been interviewed, I contacted beat reporters. For example, I contacted some South Dakota State guys pretty early in the process. Did that in Sacramento State when we were told Andy Thompson was potentially an applicant, guy who may have been interviewed. And I was told by Sac State beat reporter that Sac State is so closed-lipped with anything they do media-wise, and since they don't get a ton of media attention, it's easy for them to freeze out the media. Troy Taylor is so close with information that he'll tweet out that Sac State has signed a new player, and the sports information director has no idea who the guy is. So we don't have direct lines on Sacramento State. We can message around to see if we can get any news out, but I have not going to make any promises about us getting a lot of news out of Sacramento State. They're just in a weird situation where, because they don't get a ton of media coverage, and because they're in a city like Sacramento, which has an NBA team, and there's other stuff going on in Northern Colorado, Northern California. Man, that's a Freudian slip. I don't know what information we're going to find, but we're going to jump. Actually, before we jump out, my take is, that's a huge get for Northern Colorado. I have no idea. Well, I do know why. I think people are still going to follow the Ed McCaffrey name, and I think that maybe some guys are going to write off what the reporting was by Jaden Adams that we covered, or it's Northern Colorado. It didn't get much attention beyond like us covering it. Maybe he didn't even hear about it, or he just saw it in a passing way and just dismissed it. And he's actually talking with the coaches who are telling him, hey, it's not a problem. But look, they still got 30 other spots they got to fill. But with this one spot, they definitely upgraded. So look, Idaho's going to see Northern Colorado next year. So we're going to get to see how Elijah Dodson looks while he's in Greeley. And now, because Racketit69, one of our favorite listeners, of course, was chastising us because we're putting off the basketball talk with Northern Colorado talk, we have to jump into basketball because we had some surprise news in Idaho. Look, we played Montana Thursday. Now, both these games are in Moscow. Played Montana Thursday, Eastern Washington Saturday. And on Thursday, Idaho holds on to beat University of Montana 82-76. Idaho was led by Yusuf Saleh, who scored 19 points on 8 shots, including 3 of 4 threes. He made one of those must have been taken back because initially in the first half he was 4 of 4 from 3. So one of those must have been rolled too. But anyway, scores 19 points on 8 shots. Rashad Smith chips in 18 points on 5 shot attempts, going 3 for 3 from 3 and 7 of 8 from the free throw line. And Idaho shoots 60% on the game from 3. That's how we hang on against University of Montana, who, by the way, University of Montana is a top 4 team in conference right now. And then Saturday, hosting Eastern Washington, Idaho comes back from a 14-point deficit in the first half to win 83-80. We're led this time by Rashad Smith, 22 points on 8 of 10 shooting. Tanner Christensen adds 18 points. Trevante Anderson chips in 15. We're going to get to the other guys as well. But 2 big wins for Idaho, 2 surprising wins for Idaho. If you extend this back, since we lost to Idaho State at home, we have now beaten Weber State, Montana, and Eastern Washington consecutively, all home games. Dallas, before we go to the bigger takeaway, let's get a little narrow first. Obviously, something happened different. If we go from Idaho looked pretty bad against Idaho State, then against Weber, we talked about that last week of, look, Weber didn't take us seriously and Idaho shot 58%, and that's a game. What happened in the Montana and Eastern games?
I mean, again, they shot the doors off. It's what happens when Idaho shoots over 50% from the field. That's when they have a chance to win games. If you look at the true shooting percentage, which takes into account your field goal percentage, your 3-point percentage, your free throw percentage, Idaho in their last 3 games put up 68.5% against Weber State, 64.3% against Montana, and 63.3% against Eastern Washington. That is, if they could sustain those numbers across the season, they would be the top shooting team in college basketball. So that's not going to happen. But if Idaho goes out there and shoots better than, like, Gonzaga is second in the nation in true shooting percentage and averages, I had it up. 61.8% is their true shooting percentage across the season. South Dakota State, who is actually about to go sweep the entirety of the Summit League, and obviously got crushed by Idaho. They lead the nation in 63.6% true shooting percentage. So that's the narrow focus here. Is this team does have the offensive talent. If the shots are falling, they can hang with most teams. Again, putting up incredible shooting numbers to go beat 2 teams that 3 teams, I guess, that honestly I did not think there was a single shot after losing both games this year to Idaho State. I did not expect to see this 3-game win streak. When was the last time Idaho had a 3-game win streak in conference? You're muted, Brian.
That'd be the Vic Sanders year. I believe that's 2017, 2018. So it was a while ago.
One other thing I quickly want to shout out, Brian, well, it looks like you are thinking up where you want to take this. I do want to shout out Rashad Smith being named Big Sky Co-Player of the Week. You mentioned his stats, that first game and the second game, they're just shooting the doors off. Something to really put into perspective. In 2 games, he hit 8 threes, was perfect from 3, 8 for 8, and missed 4 total shots from the field, from the line, and beyond the arc. He missed 4 shots in 2 games. Absolutely Herculean effort in those two games. He's the first guy since Brayon Blake in January of 2018 to be named Big Sky Player of the Week for the Vandals. It's been over 4 years since we've had that.
Which is surprising to me that Trayvon Allen did not snag a Player of the Week once, although the team was awful, so maybe it's not surprising. A couple things I want to talk about is, first, nothing's changed defensively. So a lot of our overall understanding of this team isn't going to be that different. But in both the Montana game and the Eastern Washington game, it was not Mikey Dixon carrying the offensive load. He was fine. Like, Mikey Dixon wasn't terrible. Montana's pretty good at shutting Dixon down in terms of their defensive strategy, but in the way Montana collapsed into the paint to try to stop Mikey from getting any looks, other guys got looks. And to Mikey's credit, he did not force too many shots against Montana. He was only 2 for 9 for 5 points against Montana, but we were carried that day. We already talked about Saleh and Smith, but Tanner Christensen, another good game, 14.6 rebounds. Trayvonte Anderson, another solid game, 13.7 rebounds. Then you look at Eastern Washington, and once again, it's not to say that Mikey Dixon wasn't instrumental in this game. He scored 13 points on 6 of 11 shooting. That's fine. But Trayvonte Anderson, 15 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. Tanner Christensen, 18 points. Rashad Smith, like we talked about, 22 points on 8 of 10 shooting. And Philip Pepple Jr., 10 points on 5 of 5 shooting. So first, one thing that is different is other guys are stepping up. And with our posts in particular, it's because Klaus is using them in a little more aggressive way, not necessarily calling a ton of post-ups, but honestly, we're getting to Christensen if he gets really deep position where he has like a foot inside the restricted area. And at his size, that's a great shot every time he gets that. But also he's using our guys on screen and rolls and his rim runners. That is how Philip Pebble Jr. got just about every one of his points was off screen and roll or running to the rim. And Tanner Christensen got a few of his good looks that way as well. You know, I don't want to call this a complete turnaround yet, because again, we have 6 D1 wins right now, 6-18 versus D1 teams. But versus D1 teams, Dallas, Idaho's 5-6 at home, which relative to a team being 6-18, 5-6 is a lot better than you would probably guess. And against Eastern, you could hear on the stream, Marten, you were there in person, so you can tell us. 2,200 people showed up to that game, which is, it's like 60-ish% capacity. It sounded loud. Like fans were getting into it. This facility is going to be a home court advantage. And look, it already kind of is with how the team clearly, like shooting numbers in our wins. We can talk about that in a second, but 5 of our 6 wins come at home. And also of the wins we have, they're mostly the most impressive wins that we have of beating South Dakota State, Weber State, Montana, Eastern, and was Portland State at home or Portland or Sac State at home. One of the not big deal wins was at home too, but still four pretty nice wins relative to a team that's 6-18. Dallas, does that surprise you at all?
It actually does. I don't know. I don't know how to express my feelings towards this team, because this is what we were hoping we were going to see when that South Dakota State upset happened, and it was like, oh, there's potential for this team to compete night in and night out. And then we suffered through essentially the entire month of January. I know there was the wins against Sacramento State and Portland State at the end, but suffered through most of January in a bunch of games that we thought were going to look winnable that weren't. Apparently, and then that game against Idaho State, they lost by 9 at home. I thought that was it. I thought, you know what, pack it in, season's over, new coach coming in, maybe things will turn around. And then all of a sudden they kind of find their game. And now part of their game has been hope like hell that the other team is just going to miss a bunch of shots, which certainly helped with Weber starting so cold last week. But then Eastern starts out, kicks them in the teeth. They come back and pulled it out. They're peaking at the right time. Obviously playing those games at home helped, even though they had the stinker against Idaho State. It'll be interesting to see what happens this week against Sacramento State and Northern Colorado, both games that should be winnable. But again, the road record doesn't quite represent the same thing the home record does. So we're going to see. Offensively, this team, I don't think there's anything to worry about. They've obviously had a couple stinkers out there, and we've seen what happens when Mikey can't score. Sometimes the guys just aren't there to pick up the rest of the slack. But if you look at the offensive ratings, just in the conference, Idaho is actually in the middle of the pack, like a mediocre team in the Big Sky offensively, which is great. The defense is just unfortunately still horrendous. As Tom Kendall does point out, the defense seems to have picked up a little bit. But the advanced numbers don't look good on that.
Yeah, I'm going to say, Tom, love contributors. Love to hear from you guys. Yeah, the defense has not picked up. Against Eastern, we just won, surrendering a defensive rating of 117. Before that, Montana was, even though we won, the defensive rating was 108.6. Weber State, it was 108.2. And the game before that, we lost to Idaho State, was 108.2. Game before that, at Southern Utah loss was 105.6. So I would disagree with the defenses coming around. I mostly think that this team, look, to win, this team has to have they have to blitz teams. They have to. I know it's brain dead that the team that scores the most is the team that wins, but this team doesn't win with defense. We have to shoot very, very well. If you look at the field goal percentage for Idaho in our wins, it's a pretty clear marker. Against Weber State as a team, we shot 58.5%. Against Portland State, we shot 56.9%. South Dakota State, 54.9%. Eastern Washington, 54.4%. And Montana, 52%. Yeah, wins mostly track field goal percentages for this team. So glad to have the wins, but I still wouldn't bet on Idaho doing this at Northern Colorado, because if you look at our field goal percentage, like clearly we shoot much better at home, which is cool. We have real home court advantage. Idaho hasn't felt like they've had that in forever. No. And 2 of our final 4 games are at home, Dallas.
I mean, there's a legitimate chance that Idaho goes 2-2. I don't think they do much better than that, but there's a legitimate chance that Idaho goes 2-2 over the end of the season. And that is a huge turnaround to go. What would that be? 5-3 in the last 8 games of the season. That's a incredible turnaround from where we thought this team was going to be. I want to quickly point out Rack of Tits 69 jumping in asking, Dallas, how do we stack up against the Zags? Well, Chet Holmgren is way bigger and faster than Tanner Christensen is, and he also is second in the nation in true shooting. So I do want to put a little bit of water on this fire here. This team still could not compete with Gonzaga. This team probably couldn't compete with most of the guys on the bench of Gonzaga. So sorry to trade Rack of Tits. I apologize.
Yeah, the one thing I want to talk about real quick. Now, I say 3-1 is absolutely on the table because, look, if I was betting how Idaho is going to close out the rest of the season, Sacramento State is the worst team in the conference. I know the game is at Sacramento, but the Sacramento State's a team where if any of this is real, I don't care that it's a road game. Idaho has to beat Sacramento State. Sacramento State right now sits at 3-13 in conference. I mean, look, Idaho's only at 5-11, so it's not that different. But to me, Sacramento State, they essentially have two guys who can score, and the rest of the guys don't look that good. When Idaho played them in one, it was an overtime game earlier in the season. That was one of the games we talked about on the show, saying, look, Idaho just looks better than Sacramento State. We have to win this game. Northern Colorado, I would not bet on us winning in Greeley, but closing out at home versus Portland State and then versus Northern Arizona, those are 2 teams that are bottom half of the Big Sky. Northern Arizona's 5-11 in conference. Portland State's 7-9, but we already beat Portland State once. So 3-1 is certainly on the table, and that'd give us a favorable spot in the tournament. Dallas, want to talk about this for a few seconds just because Idaho is playing for tournament seeding. The top 5 teams, we hadn't specified this well enough in earlier episodes. The top 5 teams in the Big Sky Conference will all receive a bye. If the conference season ended today, the top 5 teams would be Montana State 1 seed, Weber State 2, Northern Colorado 3, Southern Utah 4, Montana 5, and then the first team on the outside looking at a bye is Eastern Washington. Now, the reason I want to bring this up is Idaho on paper right now would be slated to play Northern Arizona in the Big Sky Conference tournament if that's our first game. And this is going to be the first time in a while, Dallas.
I think Idaho would actually be the 8th seed. Correct me if I'm wrong, and we don't have all the tiebreakers, but I think Idaho would actually be the 8th seed in that scenario, which is incredible. Anyways. Meaning that's the 8-9 game for anybody that isn't following on the same brain path Brian and I are. Idaho would be the higher seed, or the lower seed. You guys know what I mean. Idaho would be the favored team in that situation.
I don't think we would, because we lost to Northern Arizona so far. We have an even record with them in conference, and we lost.
For some reason, I wasn't thinking that head-to-head record was the first tiebreaker. I was thinking the Big Sky tournament is super weird. This is a discussion for off. This is producing in public where I'm like,
we're going to stop this part of the conversation. Yeah. So Idaho right now would be playing Northern Arizona. Even if we move up or down slightly, Idaho would very likely avoid Eastern Washington the first round. So teams we would be looking at playing potentially right now it's Northern Arizona, but Portland State's on the table. And honestly, Idaho State is on the table. Idaho State, of course, be the worst matchup because we were swept by Idaho State. But this will be the first year in a while that we're not opening with the team in the top half of the conference or right around the middle of the conference, where the last few years we've had to play the 6th seed every time. That means on paper, I mean, if we keep playing solid, I don't think there's a tournament run in this team But there's a first round potential win if we can keep this going, if we can keep scoring, and if we can start shooting on the road. Because I don't care if you call it neutral court. Big Sky Conference Tournament is not at ICCU, which, as far as our shooting results, is a road game.
Sorry, I have no follow up for that. I got nothing.
Okay. We'll use that as our transition point. But yeah, anyway, guys, playing Sacramento State Thursday. That should be a win. If this is real, if we're going to call this, if we're going to say this is actual momentum and not Idaho just shooting unbelievably well 3 games in a row, which it is on the table. This has just been Idaho shooting unbelievably well. I don't want to write it off only as that, because there's been, look, the half court offense looks much better right now. Like, there's movement in the half court that we weren't seeing earlier in the year. So I don't want to write this off as us just shooting well, because there are some practical changes that we've already talked about too, like how we're using our post. But if Idaho's going to call this real momentum, we have to win at Sac State on Thursday. Now it's time to bring in Hot Take Heemstra, because we're going to shift over to the women's team, because we have some more news that is not catastrophically awful. First, we're going to get to the other player of the week Idaho had. But first, Idaho travels to Montana, loses 76-73. Beyonce B leads us with 13 points, 13 rebounds. Louise Forsyth, 29 points, 3 rebounds. Cindy Gandy, 15 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. Saturday, Idaho hosts Eastern, just like the men did. The women played first. Idaho wins 79-72. Beyonce B leads us again, 26 points, 11 rebounds. Ashlyn Walls, 14 points. Tiana Johnson, 10 points, 5 rebounds. And then Monday, a coronavirus makeup game, I believe, Martin. Montana comes to Idaho. Idaho gets a sweep in a week. Wait, no, we did not. No, we lost first game. Idaho gets revenge against Montana, holds on to win 70-69. Beyonce B, 24 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. Allison Kirby, 11 points. Louise Forsyth, 19 points. Martin, after those 3 games, 2 big wins and a competitive loss. How you feeling about the women's team now?
I'm feeling a lot better than I was after the week that was, I believe it was Idaho State and Weber State. Was that last week? I believe it was. Sounds about right. It was just a hell of a lot better. I was at the Montana game too with my dad, who was visiting for my birthday, and I was watching that game on my phone, and it was very competitive. It could have gone either way, and just at the very end, Montana just pulled it out. It was back and forth. I believe no team led by more than 5 in that Montana game at Missoula. So it was a close competitive one throughout, and it felt like they could hang with anybody. And I think Montana this year is playing for a bye week this year. This year,
they're number 4 in conference right now, Martin.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
If the tournament started today, Montana would have a bye.
Yep. Yeah, they're beating teams that are probably going to play in the conference tournament in the first couple rounds, and it's good to see that they are doing that. Eastern, it never kind of felt like the game when they were playing at Cheney, where they were kind of just a little back and forth in the first half, pulled away in the end. At least that was the other good thing. I know they also played They played this. Sorry, I'm trying to think what they played more complete this time and played a more. They showed me at least that they can come back when they have the shaky boat moments where it seems like they're losing control. The game's going to slip out of their hands, and it's going to go away from them. But they show that they can come back from that. And the Montana game was where it really.
Can I jump in real quick? When you say you're saying the Idaho women.
Yes.
Against Eastern, they showed.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm jumping all over the place. I should have been more specific with that. In the Montana game, that was on the COVID makeup one. Sorry, I should have been more specific with that. They played it was a little shaky. I think Montana jumped out to a 14, 15-point lead. Coaches, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I doubted you. I doubted you at all this game. I actually thought this was the first time You'll hear me say this. I thought they weren't going to come back from it. I was ready to concede that they were going to lose by 20, 25 points against Montana just because of what I've seen in the past. But hey, they showed they can pull it back, and they beat Montana at the end, 70-69. And it was a relief because those final 2 minutes of the game were just. If you watch the game back, I don't know how much courtside they show, but you can just see me in a nervous kind of rocking back and forth.
And as a result of those 3 games, Marten, Beyonce B, player of the week in the Big Sky. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, Idaho essentially swept. I mean, Achilles from Eastern was Big Sky player of the week with Rashad Smith. But Beyonce B was not sharing the honor. She averaged 21 points, 10.3 rebounds, while shooting 42.8% and picking up 31 rebounds overall. Mm-hmm. I mean, she's a all Big Sky level player. Rashad Smith had a really good week. He's not going to shoot 80% the entire season. So, hey, glad he capitalized. Glad he got a reward for that. Mm-hmm. Beyonce B, some of this is the level we have kind of grown to expect from her because Beyonce B is an all Big Sky level talent.
Preseason conference player of the year, if I remember right, too.
And not too bad. So Marten, just want to talk to you real quick about conference tournament seeding. Mm-hmm. Right now, if the season were to end, Idaho would be the number 7 team in the conference, which means they would be matching up with Weber State. 5-12 Weber State. I know the season's not over yet. Idaho's 2 games out of getting into a bye, which means with 4 games left, Idaho could sneak into the top 5, but Idaho does not control their own destiny. They're going to need a decent amount of help, and they're going to have to win. They're essentially going to have to win out if they have a prayer of having any sort of bye. If the season ended today, it would be Weber State. Idaho would be playing. How do you feel about that matchup?
I feel good. I know they've beaten Weber State twice this year, and sometimes it's always kind of hard to beat a team a third time in the same season, but I would feel more confident against them than I would probably a lot of other teams in the Big Sky. Maybe other than Portland State, but I'd feel pretty good against them.
And Idaho closes out. The Idaho women have a slightly different schedule than the men because of
COVID makeups.
Yeah, they have Idaho women's. They have the Sacramento State game on the 24th, just like the men do, except this one is in Moscow. Idaho women have Northern Colorado on Saturday the 26th, but then on Monday, Idaho plays Portland State February 28th in Moscow. Then on Thursday, play Portland State again. So I know we're moving forward into
Wednesday, not Thursday.
My bad, Wednesday. But the Idaho women close with a relatively favorable schedule in terms of teams that they're going to be playing, win-loss record. Downside is, as far as tournament seeding, you would like them to have more games against teams above them, but Idaho does get to play Northern Arizona and Sacramento State, so Idaho can take a game off the lead. Idaho's 2 games behind both those teams for a bye in the first round. So Idaho gets a couple teams they're going to take a shot at, but how are you feeling about this team in terms of the tournament? I mean, I already said with the men, I think the men have maybe a tournament win in them. I wouldn't write it off at this point. I don't think they have 2. How do you feel about the women so far as they hit their stretch run?
I'm feeling pretty good. I know it seems kind of normally I'm after sitting through the Splash Sisters for 4 years, and then the couple years after they were 1 and 2, I think a 4 seed in there. I'm still feeling pretty good for being a team not outside that's not in a bye week, that's not in a bye position right now. I know the last time they weren't in one, they didn't make the tournament. That was I think the last time John Newley didn't have a bye week was the 2014-15 season, and they finished at the 9th spot in the WAC, and in the WAC Big Sky when it was just the top 8 teams that made it. And hey, next year they won the tournament. But I'm still feeling good about this team going into the tournament. It might not be a tournament. It might not win the tournament this year, but I still think they can probably win a game or two, maybe make it to the semifinals and have a good showing there.
Okay. You heard it from Hot Take right here. So before we close the bar on the shortest episode we've had in quite some time, Dallas, because you've been on the shelf, you don't have to bring up anything. I'm going to throw it back to you. Anything men's or women's we did not hit on that while you've been sitting on the sidelines came back up?
I think we should just keep this in perspective for everybody. Brian, does this Idaho men's team, just to circle it back to our veggies, because the world revolves around veggie talk, veggie tales, hashtag OnlyFans, patreon.com/Tubs at the Club. Whew, stumbled through that one. Tom, you're dead to me. But you're right. It could be worse. You could be a Kings fan, and then I would never talk to you again. Tom Kendall, for anybody interested in jumping into the chat, has just informed me that he's a Sharks fan, and the Sharks are hated rivals of the Ducks. So anyways, Brian, is there any chance that we see another year for the current regime of the basketball staff? Do you see that happening with this all of a sudden spike at the end of this season that we have not seen in previous years?
We are now making this a tradition of talking men's basketball, talking women's basketball, and talking men's basketball again. We'll handle this more smoothly someday, and that day is not the day. So should this change how people feel about Idaho basketball? Look, so yes and no. Idaho is a preposterously bad defensive team that is absolutely not changing at all. If you are curious how bad we are, Dallas, the Mendoza line for a solid defensive outing is a defensive rating of below 100 versus D1 teams. Just take a guess. How many times has Idaho held teams to a defensive rating, D1 teams to a defensive rating below 100?
Without looking at the stats, I'm going to say once.
4. It's happened 4 times. The best defensive rating we have is a 94.4 on the season, came against Cal Poly earlier in the year. I bring that up because our best defensive outing came in 2021. This team is defensively, like, the jury is in. This team is not getting better defensively. They're not going to. That's not how they're ever going to be. They're not going to win games with their defense. They're only going to win games right now if they can have very good offensive outings. So has the defensive side of the ball changed? No, it's actually gotten worse since the start of the year. So that's one demerit. Now, in the positive sense, like I said earlier, the half-court offense is looking better. That was the thing we've talked about throughout the season of when this team can run, they create good looks, they score real well, but half-court had been a dumpster fire. It's starting to look like we have a better strategy on the offensive side of the ball when the game slows down. So that's a point in the direction of Zach Kloss changing in a positive way. And also, we talked about earlier in the season, he's radically shifted offensive strategies this season compared to last season. That shows a willingness to try something different because you need to. All those are great. But again, I keep in mind, look, we've won these games where 2 of the last games, look, we shoot 60% on threes against Montana and barely win. Rashad Smith shoots 80% against Eastern Washington. We shoot 52% from the field against Eastern Washington. 54% from the field against Eastern Washington and win by 3. 54% is if that's your average, that would be a historically good offensive metric to hit. Against Weber State, we already talked about it, had to shoot almost 59% to barely win. So gotta hold that asterisk of, there's some things on the floor that have changed, but I mean, unless we win out and we're seeing more things develop in a positive way, I don't think people should change their understanding of Zach Kloss right now. I mean, to give him credit, like Idaho does have a 3-game winning streak. We did not have that previously. If he closes out winning 5 out of 6 or 6 out of 7, Zach Kloss will have the argument that, hey, the team was getting together at the end of the year. It just took a little more time. Now, I would also say I as a fan and frustrated that it took 2/3 of the year for us to figure out a little bit of a half-court offense. So that is not a point in that direction. But overall, I would say Vandal, stay in the moment, be happy with the wins we have and that we're having fun games, but do not yet turn this into being something more than the 3 years body of work we have.
I mean, just to put a bow on that, a 3-game win streak is very nice. Like Brian said, we haven't had one of those in years. A 3-game win streak is not a reason to be like, oh my God, we got to keep doing this. One good 10-day stretch does not absolve years. That's all I have to say.
No, and people should honestly pay attention to, in addition to wins, losses, because look, I mean, he just has to pick up wins for it to even be a prayer. Just pay attention to what looks different, because that's what the evidence of coaching will be, is what is changing from the beginning of the year. And look, against Eastern Washington, we're moving the ball pretty well in a way that earlier in the season we certainly weren't. Like, we've talked about assist numbers being something you can look at for Idaho as evidence of us moving the ball around. Well, hey, we picked up 14 assists against Eastern Washington. You know, that's pretty solid. Against Montana, we picked up 13 assists. So look, not like world-beating numbers, but much better than some of the numbers we've seen from earlier in the year. So look, some parts of the offense are certainly getting better, but I can't write off that we've barely won with Herculean shooting efforts. You know, if this were the Vic Sanders 2017, 2018 team shooting 59%, you probably win by 25.
So you're telling me that shooting 60% from 3 against Montana is not sustainable?
No. And that's what I mean when I say that this team has to win by having huge offensive nights, because just defensively, we already covered it. We've had 4 respectable defensive outings the entire season. Honestly, we have 4 games giving up a defensive rating over 120, which is a very, very bad number. But that reference point, we have as many 120 or higher defensive ratings as we have sub 100 defensive ratings. So not enough to me has changed, but hey, look, he's got 4 games to show what else is going to change. Have to pick up wins, but please try to pay attention to what looks different. And half-court offense does look different. We're getting more guys to contribute. That is different. But until we get to the end of the season, I'm not going to say anything should really change.
So you've heard it here first. Brian is out on the Kloss lifetime extension. That's it. Go Vandals.
Well, we're going to call this a night. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We're going to throw it to Colby a Cuff to play us out. And as always, go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
So raise your glass and have a drink with me. Here's to the Vandals in the crowd, all just out there living the dream right up